Yeah, let me just say welcome, everyone. We've been here for a few minutes, but welcome to the interactive roundtable. The idea really for this is to discuss the future of the branch and make it as interactive as possible. So post all your questions, disagree with our speakers, make comments, as much as you want in the chat. After our speakers make their opening comments, they would be delighted, obviously, to respond to any questions. So keep them coming. Before we kick off, the format is that each of our speakers will make some opening remarks about their views about the future of the branch, where it's heading, and so on. And then we move to the interactive bit. So just to quickly introduce them, we have Nick Pegram, star of our interactive session who we've been waiting for. And obviously you'll see him in the keynote. He's head of Bold 360 for LogMeIn. Celine Allain, financial lead at LogMeIn. Alexandra Marsden, head of distributed banking operations at Monzo. And Des Odell, AI implementation consultant, who Victor Cruz also referred to as a LinkedIn superstar, which is high praise. So can we please kick off with you, Nick? And also just to say, before you joined us, we've all been speculating on the answer to the poll question, which apparently only you know. So let's move over to you.
It's meant to be kind of contentious, and I think that the lens on it is probably down to interpretation. So let's just say that maybe there's not the perfect answer, but there is an answer. Yeah, I really want to pick up on two themes. So I think what I tried to do in the keynote was, as I mentioned at the start, sort of take us back before we look forward. And I think what's really hard at the moment, actually, for a lot of financial organizations is the planning side. I think when you think about the change that's happening at the moment, it's just really, really hard to look sort of, the mid and long term. I think that there's a lot of organizations that are just really looking at the short term, and a lot of the short term needs are really being driven by consumer behavior. And the consumer behavior that we've seen a rapid transformation of in this current climate is this migration to a cashless society. And there's sort of two things that I want to pick up on, and I'm really keen to get a bit more insight on from the panel today, but also for people to contribute to. And that is that when I pick this up and I think about the service that I get through my applications, and I know that we've got Alexandra here. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of Monzo, but when I think about, I can connect my services that are highly personalized and relate to me from my mobile. How do I get that experience in branch? And that's one of the things that I sort of talk to, this migration to a cashless society, highly personalized, connected information. For example, if I want to move money, not only can I do that using digital currency, not only can I do that to other currencies, I connect to, for example, TransferWise. I've also got Wonderbill that makes suggestions on, am I paying too much for my utility bills, for example? A lot of this information is being fed through to me. How do I get that experience from the retail banking side? And the example that I provided was very much about, actually, we do have a complex set of requirements for the public and for consumers. And I think the in-branch experience is an opportunity to service lots of different demographic owners at any one time. And so when I talk to the different provision of services that I get on my mobile, that's absolutely something that can be applied in branch. And I think that a lot of those data sets that a lot of the retail banks have on their customers, they can be adapted to not only provide a lot of product related information and a lot of big purchases that I related to in the keynote, but also there's, I think, a humility factor at the moment and a human factor where, there are individuals that are in challenging set of circumstances, and therefore, providing that help and support face to face feels like it's something that's very powerful at the moment. And one of the examples that we have is that we've actually got a retail bank whose agents use our AI technology. They had an experience where a consumer or a customer of theirs was having a real life challenge. They were a gambling addict, actually, and they required not only a great deal of support from the financial side, but actually it was a little bit more serious than that. And long story short, the agent was able to guide them through a set of contextual information that was very much based upon the relevancy of the profile and the challenge that that particular customer had to the Samaritans. And therefore, it was very much about, this isn't just a sort of a bank and customer experience, it's very much about that person's circumstances. And that's really where I think, technology can play a really powerful role to help provide the right level of guidance, perhaps not for the agent to get too close to that end customer as well, but also, provide them the right route and some options in terms of, their particular circumstances and situation that they're in. Yeah, so for me, I think that hopefully it's going to be a healthy debate. I think that we could probably talk about this for a very long period of time. I'm going to hand back now to the rest of the panel, but for me, these are really front of mind for me, and I'm interested in hearing more about, what stories we might have that talk to some of those subjects.
Thanks, Nick. And we're going to pass over to you now, Des, for your opening comments.
Thank you for that, Nick, and thank you, Lisa, for inviting me along today. I appreciate that. I think from my perspective, the future of the branch is how this is positioned, and the last 6 months has really taught us a lot. Contact centres have been closed, branches have been closed, or contact centres have been working at a very reduced times that they're open. And so what that's done, that's actually forced customers to go online, where people wouldn't have persisted with it. They would have picked the phone up. They're now sort of trying to navigate their way around some online sites, and they're sticking with it. I think we've seen the volumes go up from pre-COVID levels to now, about 40% increase in online transactions. So customers are finding that if they have got a question or they have got a process they want to act, they can find it online. And what that's putting a spotlight on is that some of the processes online aren't that good. And there are some points of friction. And so businesses have a great opportunity to enhance those areas of their customer journey and to make them better. And if you then look at the other side of that, for the branch network, branches were closed for a long time. And now you've got social distancing measures. You might have queues in branches. You've got to wear a mask. If you're getting on public transport to get there, it's a bit more difficult. And so those two things sort of don't paint a very good picture for what the future branches may hold. However, if you look at the flip side of that, and that is, we are hitting a period now of financial hardship. There are people who will have problems with mortgages, paying other bills, and also their savings. They'll be drawing down on their savings. And some of those questions are difficult. And so the human touch to deal with people and to guide people through those circumstances, especially when a lot of people are very anxious, and we've still got a lot of vulnerable customers out there, is really going to, the branch is going to be quite important to carry out that process. And if we look at, financial services, I presume a lot of people on this call are from the financial services industry, and it's a complex industry. We fill it full of our business jargon and product jargon, and then the regulator comes along and says we've got to tell the customer absolutely everything right at the outset. And so we've got reams of content that we share with customers, and that's really tricky. And the whole landscape of how we distribute products is tricky. It's sold through IFAs, it's sold through partners, it's sold direct. So for a customer perspective, it is complicated. So the challenge is, how do you make it consistent across all of the channels we've now made available to customers? So we've got a branch network, we've got an online network, phone, email, and people still use post, of course. If someone goes into a branch and they get told, oh, that's something you need to do online, they go home and try it online, they can't make it work. Maybe they're just trying to change their address or update a detail. And then they pick up the phone and they speak to someone and they're told to go into a branch. That is the most frustrating experience for any customer, and I think it probably resonates with a few of us here. So customers will, at this point in time, while they've got more time to be online, if they're not getting a positive experience from their online journey, they will look around and they will migrate to other products, especially if they speak to their friends and colleagues, and there's lots of recommendations out there of other financial services products you can get. And this is where AI can really make a difference. And I think Nick spoke to it in his initial speech, and the keynote speech, about internal support centres. So getting AI capability where you've got a consistent one story of the truth that's available to agents and contact centres, the staff in the branch, and in the online experience, so that wherever a customer goes, they're getting the same experience, the same information. It really helpful way to use AI. And then conversational content with customer-facing conversational content, where you've got those long regulatory pieces of content. How can you break those down into conversations to guide customers specifically to the content that relates to their product? So really good use cases that can be used in a branch as well as at home. And all of the time, you're capturing lots of content and data about what customers are actually doing, what their intent is, and start to be able to predict what they're going to want to do next, and to make that available in the online journeys. So I think there's a real opportunity to bring the tech and the human elements together and get the best out of both. So from a personal perspective, in the branch or online, it's the empathy, the creativity, and the professionalism of our staff that we really want to bring to the fore and make available to customers, but the efficiency of the AI solutions in dealing with large questions. So just to wind up, but the future of the branch in the short term, it's very much needed to deal with the current issues. But technology will arrive, and it will arrive progressively, and it will start, I think, with some of those technologies being used in the branch and then migrating back to home. Sorry, Liz, I'll stop there.
No, that was great, Des. And it's interesting because you pointed to some important drivers that are leading people into the branch: financial distress, the desire for that kind of human interaction when you're facing challenges. So it's really interesting now to pass over to Alexandra, who obviously works for an organization that has never had that human touch point, that face-to-face touch point. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thanks, Lisa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Des, for that. And I think I was so excited to join today, so thank you for inviting me. And I was thinking about this last night in terms of the future of the branch. And so, look, my first banking job was in 1991, where I joined NatWest, which was in branch as an advisor, and spent around 10 years in branches with them. And my last job, which I've just ended the contract for last week, with Monzo, and that's obviously an app-based challenger bank with now 4 million customers in the last year. And I was thinking about what's different, and actually the rules are the same. In NatWest in 1991, you still had to comply with the regulation. The customers still had the same inquiries. There was an overdrafts team and a servicing team, and your checks came in by post, right? Which seems ridiculous now. But what's changed is technology. So actually, the technology gains that we've made across all sectors are the things that have meant banks like Monzo are able to offer services in a very flawless way through mobile technology. And I think the challenge that the bit in the middle is the bit that we have to figure out in terms of the future of the branch, where I think the next point, you've got the legacy systems, the legacy products built on different platforms at the relevant point in time, and the customers are now picking up new products on different platforms, and we can't join them together unless we have significant investment. That's probably not going to happen, right? So I was thinking about actually the customer demographic in this, and I think what we'll see is a natural move of customers who are anyone after kind of, I'd say, Gen Z coming through, who don't require and won't have those products and systems and services on legacy platforms, and won't want to transact in the way that the customers pre-Gen Z did, won't need face-to-face and don't actually work outside of the digital environment. So I think it's about trying to figure out at what point as an organisation do you have enough customers to tip the balance to move towards just digital servicing, sales, retention, and digital platforms. And also, sorry, I was just reading the chats as well. And also, you know, and only each individual, I guess, legacy bank will know that. A couple of good examples, and I'm happy to chat loads about this, as you can tell, are there in HSBC, where I worked for a couple of years, sort of a kind of a hybrid of new and old. A lot of credit card technology was on old green screen capability. Who remembers green screen technology? Yeah, and so that couldn't be migrated or linked with any of the new technology because investment was just too costly. So you always had this pool of legacy customers with legacy queries that couldn't take place online, that had to have specialist servicing in terms of human interaction. That's a huge cost to any organisation. Versus new voice ID enrolment, which could be done on mobile, on app. But for some customers, and I remember one customer who just didn't have the technology, didn't have an iPhone, couldn't make it work, had to go into branch. So forcing them into branch to do something on the bank's technology, that doesn't really make sense either. So there's kind of a mismatch of joining those systems and platforms together. And at Monzo, you know, we have human, I think this is a really key point, that the USP for Monzo in my time there has been the human interaction through in-app chat. So we're not talking about bots answering with canned responses. We're not talking about, yes, content's great and you can make that as accessible and as Google-like as you want, but the leverage still was the human interaction through in-app chat. So training those frontline staff to be really skilled in either fraud investigations, under the same regulated rules, in vulnerable customer, really distressed situations, Des, I think we touched on that, these really deep, difficult conversations, but using technology to have that conversation. And interestingly, even Monzo, which started as a mobile bank, has seen over time with the introduction of different products and services, at least kind of circa 15% of customers dropping off chat, wanting to speak on the phone. So having to build then voice technology and capability. And does that seamlessly integrate or not? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I think even as we move forward in this new world, there are going to be these, you know, have to build out and have the technology, the AI, the infrastructure to support that drop off. And also being really clear about, can we actually do everything for our customers under that one banner? And I'm not sure we can yet. Finally, that bit in the middle for me, you know, I spent a long time working in contact centres here and across the globe of HSBC, where the latest buzzword was omnichannel. And that meant, could you seamlessly link all of your channels in so that the customer and the agent could see everything on one platform in banking and insurance? And the answer is no, we couldn't do that. We haven't found a way to do that. In my time at Aviva, it was about One Aviva Direct, for every single product that's sold directly on one platform. And again, not quite working as well as the idea. So I think there's a combination for me of understanding that customer demographic, and when your customer is at a tipping point, your customer base is at a tipping point where you can move fully to digital. And in the meantime, how do you get there? And most importantly, if you have still physical branches, what are they offering? Why does it make sense to go? And I'm still not yet convinced that I can answer that. I'd like to think it's where you can go and get virtual advice. But I actually think if your content's great and you can self-serve, then you can find the answers elsewhere. So I'm going to hand back to you, Lisa, on that point.
Thanks, Alexandra. You raised so many interesting issues there, and it's great to have your perspective. And this is a great time to hand over to you, Celine, because obviously you'll have dealt with customers to address some of the very challenges that Alexandra just outlined.
Yeah, I think I'm on mute.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. It shows on mute. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be on that panel. I think I've been on a lot of panels lately, but this topic is definitely an exciting one for me anyway. So hi everyone. I guess I as Nick said, it's important to sort of reflect on the past to move forward, and I'd like to say that historically, because I've been reflecting and thinking on about this topic lately, and historically I think branches have been at the heart of the customer relationship for banks. And it was also actually used to differentiate themselves from the other non-branch financial institutions. So I'm from a French Caribbean island, and I remember growing up seeing my parents liking going to the branch. and I guess we can question whether that was because it was, you know, the not the only channel, but apart from phone, really, there was no other way to engage with your bank. But it was also very much cultural. You would only trust your bank if you really see the people that is dealing with your money. So having a strong relationship with your bank and your advisor meant a lot. But people would go to the bank to really get information, open an account, cash a check. But again, if I reflect on the past, sometimes it was pretty much just a place to have a human interaction. And again, I remember going to the bank with my dad and getting some goodies, for example, each time I would visit the bank. So there again, they were trying to build that relationship with customer. So for a long time, branch has been the differentiator for banks. But I guess the question is really, is the in-person interaction enough for customers to trust the bank and to be loyal to the bank? Because when you look at the rise of new communication channels, the different ways of interacting with providers such Amazon and Netflix, I mean, it's a reality. Consumers have changed the way they want to consume services, products, and they have redefined how they want to be loyal to their brand and to their providers. So I guess customers just want their banks to adapt to the way they now use to interact with these more digital providers. We all have busy schedule. I think many of us cannot just expect people to have time to queue at the bank just to open an account. And even for more complex products like mortgages, you know, customers expect to have these processes simplified. And there's an example of a colleague of mine who's going through a mortgage process, for example. So she's been finding the whole process quite painful because she could get a mortgage in principle in minutes, but still she needed to go into the branch to ID herself when in this current context. And she lives in Ireland, so she's back into full lockdown and she can't really go to the branch. So I think I wouldn't say it's the end of the branch, and quite the contrary, but I guess the question is more around how can they rethink the branch concept as a whole. If we look at how COVID has forced many organizations to change and disrupt in a short period of time, the branch needs to revisit its purpose and also its unique selling point as customers' behaviors is changing. I think digital is very broad as a topic, but if anything, customers should be at the heart of that change, redesigning the in-branch experience with digital, while at the same time rethinking that whole journey from online to branch to meet customer expectation is the start of providing successful customer experience and also empowering the branch. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic because I guess digital is very much part of how we do things now. At the same time, people still want that human touch, but it's about how can we have the right balance between providing that human, providing other products and services that is probably more receptive as a digital service for customers based on the current context.
Thanks for that, Celine. And just to remind everyone who's watching, two things. Alexandra has just posed a question to those of you who are watching. Let us know how many times you've been to a branch this year. But also to remind you that in addition to us asking questions and me asking questions of the panel, we really are keen for you to share your thoughts and post your questions in the chat or observations if you have any. So far, I'm winning with 5 times I think I've been to the branch this year. Victor Cruz 0. Great. Well, thanks to those introduction guys. That set the scene beautifully. I wonder, and obviously I'll start with you on this one, Alex, but to the rest of the panel, please feel free to jump in. So Monzo, Alex, offers a particular set of services, right, that are kind of limited compared to other financial institutions. And yet you pointed to some of the challenges around creating that seamless experience, whether, through chat or self-serve and through an agent. Do you think that, what are some of the ways to improve that and make that cross-channel experience more seamless? But do you think that the future of the financial services is around providing that specialized set of services?
Yeah, I'll try and answer as best I can. But again, just encourage everyone in the chat bar to ask questions or give thoughts as well, because it's a super neat way to keep connected. So I think what I found with Monzo, certainly from my perspective, overseeing the operations team, which is around 700 distributed, so fully home working frontline members of the team, is that the services that were offered matched the technology capability. And by that I mean, to open a current account, you have to have a mobile device to do your ID&B, which consists of a selfie and a voice overlay, which means that any further interaction, you can always match back that that's the customer, because you've got that information to hand immediately. And therefore, you're setting the expectation of, if you want to come and be part of this bank, this is the way that we transact. There isn't an option to open a current account through branch or through online or through the post. So almost certainly there's a smaller pool of customers to start with. That said, so that's great. So you're setting the expectation, and the technology and the infrastructure that supports that matches perfectly, seamless. I think we're using words like flawless and frictionless today. So flawless, great. And that meant that Monzo could scale and move from 1 million customers to 4 million customers in the space of 12 months. Pretty incredible, right? And then the infrastructure that supports that from a servicing perspective matches. It's the same technology that the frontline member of staff would use to see Nick as a customer and Nick's holdings or transactions. Great. But then what happens is, as you overlay and launch more products and services, unless that you use the same technology and all your processes and procedures are aligned with it, you start to get these little fissures or cracks. And by that I mean, so launching new products such as a tiered package account or an overdraft facility, then customers, it's more complex. The questions are different. And what happened at Monzo was that customers would drop off in app chat because they'd want to ring. And so you're opening out customers to more friction in the process. And so the voice technology and voice integration wasn't so slick. So actually what I found was that you still have the similar challenges to the legacy bank, which was if a customer calls, you're looking at one piece of technology, and then you're having to move to look at a different piece of technology to resolve the issue in in-app chat, because they're not linked together. So I think that's forefront of mind for me in any now service provider as any new product launches. And where I actually found that work the best is where I worked for Royal London, who launched their direct consumer products, and they launched 5 within a 12-month period, which were insurance products, and all of them were built mobile first. And that meant all of the products and processes that supported it, from contact center right through to servicing, could support mobile interaction. And that for me is a great way to make sure that you're building out and protecting that customer demographic growing. But I think that any time that you add in friction, and that's complex products, it's something that's not simple, like financial difficulties, borrowing, overdrafts, mortgages. These are more complex and have more requirements under our regulation. I think that there has to be a stop and pause point for the provider that talks about, can this be done through the cheapest cost to serve, which is mobile, that supports the customer base that we have. So I think I've kind of waffled a bit there, Lisa, so keep me straight on the questions. But for me, certainly that's an example of where it works really, really well, but you're constricting to a very small proportion of customer or segmentation of customers. And if you want to grow beyond that, then as Monzo do, then these things have to start looking and feeling slightly different.
You know, that's interesting. And thinking about, as you said, as you grow the complexity of the products that you offer, everything else has to move along with it. And and that touches to some of what both Des and Nick said in their opening remarks. And I wonder if either of you wanted to add or comment on what Alex just said about that process and that complexity. Des, I think you're on mute. Des, you're on mute. Nick's not.
Nick,
I'll maybe have two or 3 minutes on this, and I think that Alexandra, I mean, I've just put a question in the channel, because I think that this almost like this transition from the branch experience moving to what I think has been actually quite a fragmented experience in terms of support. You go into a branch and actually some of your queries can only be addressed by contact center, and you're having your hand held by a branch assistant who is on the phone to the contact center, but is essentially acting as you. This triage, I think, has been so fragmented and so lumpy. I think it's provided actually a lot of frustration, and that's probably led to that sort of negative sentiment of the in-branch experience. And I made reference to, my keynote. If you're able to have, technologies that have your pre-branch experience be really slick, whether you can, automate a time slot with a specialist. I don't know, let's say you are inquiring about an ISA and you want some good financial advice, and you get to see a branch advisor, and they are well briefed, and you're able to book your appointment seamlessly, and you sit down with that person and you talk with a lot of relevancy about your needs. That feels like a really, really good, strong branch experience. But then if I suddenly ask a question about my account, and then the person that I sat down with has to use the contact center and it's a really poor experience, that then resonates. And it's a really, really strong example, I think, of where the legacy technology just hasn't caught up. And there's I think a massive challenge that retail banks have with technical debt. I know it's a very broad term, but the legacy of systems and operations mean that I think it's very hard to sort of knock down what should be the priority, and how should the priority of technology enablement be administered based upon what I think at the moment is a lot of retail banks fighting. And there's a lot of fire hoses, right? So there's a lot of them just keeping the lights on at the moment. As Des said, a lot of contact center agents working from home. It's really, really challenging operationally. So I just think it's really hard to far ahead at the moment around the customer experience. Bit of a ramble, I know, but yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I think
yeah, I mean, I can hear you okay. It's just a little on the quiet side, but you're certainly audible. I don't know if there's any way to make that a little bit louder, but thanks for that, Nick. And I think that leads nicely on to my next question, which I'll direct to Des and Celine, is about how do you make that customer experience in branch as slick as, for what mostly is the slicking, like if you were on Monzo, for example, that online experience, when it's working well, how do you do that in branch? But also I'm going to take note of a comment that one of the participants put in the chat, which says that he's a little bit uncertain around the value of adding advanced tech in branch. Is that the way to go? Is that where you should be spending your tech budget, or should you be concentrating on the making the online experience fantastic? So with that in the back of your mind, let's start with you, Des.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lisa. And if I can just pick up on a couple of points that you've said previously, and just tie that together with what you said there and that question. But Celine's point about a trip to the high street, it also includes a trip to the bank. And that still resonates with a lot of people, and I think the people that do that are of a certain age, certain demographic, and they're the people who've got the most financial services products. They've got the most money. They're your most valuable customer. So taking the technology, and they're probably the group that not struggle, but find the technology a little bit harder. And I implemented a solution for annuities and lifetime mortgages customers, where it was the average age was 72, and put it online. And it was really interesting to see what their behaviours were, and particularly during COVID, where they had to use it. They don't like the Google search bar. They didn't. What they did, they started navigating through buttons to find the information they wanted. And then the other thing that they really liked was the use of video, and they'd watch a video a number of times to sort of get the message across. So I think there is a way to reach that demographic. Now, bringing it into the branch, and the point that was just made about spending your tech budget on enhancing tech in the branch. If you've got a situation where you have staff in the branch that can show people how it's done, replicate the online experience in the branch, replicating those customers, that's the best use of that budget. It's to start to display your technology and to showcase it, if you like, so that customers can feel comfortable about doing it at home. I hope that makes sense. I'll pass on to Celine, pick up on that.
Yeah. Over to you, Celine.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with this. And I would also add that we also need to think of the current context. Unfortunately, we've all seen how COVID have, changed things and changed the way we interact with companies. But to remain relevant to customers, because it's always important to put customers in the heart of that transformation. I think staying the same for the banks in terms of the way they've been operating the branch is not really an option. In fact, I guess technology and new competitors and changing customer behavior are already driving that shift from to a more digital branch. And if we look at the world we live in, we are constantly connected, and customer, I guess, want to have better value from their bank, and they want to have that same personalized and digital experience that they get with other provider. I think that would actually help get to what I would say a more like Monzo-like experience, but to bring that more digital and personalized experience to the branch, I think they will need to reimagine the way they deliver the knowledge, the way they interact, and that is relevant to each of their customer. Because the way you are interacting with your customer, you should think of your customer as a unique individual. And then the branch customer as well, if you think of the branch customer, maybe he might love digital, right? But they also demand for a more human touch. So when it comes to key financial moments, for example, so improving that digital customer engagement and creating frictionless and seamless customer experience at the branch, it's really key to provide that modern customer experience. Again, I keep on referring to Monzo because that digital customer experience that they've been able to provide to their customer. So technology like AI, I think, frees up the branch employees from repetitive transaction handling that can easily be done through digital services, and then they can focus on guiding customers that are maybe more cautious to use digital services, or again, we need to think of money as still a sensitive topic. So maybe, there's a place for this demographic or these customers to be having that in-branch experience. But it's how can they rethink the branch model to provide the best customer experience to their customers. You look at banks like NatWest, they are investing in their branch to bring them up to date, but with the way customer wants to bank with them, and using technology like ours to really empower the staff in the branch with a consistent knowledge to deliver a more unique experience in the branch.
Thanks for that, Celine. It sounds like what both you and Des are saying is that positive in-branch experience can actually make people empowered to then take that online if they get that consistency.
Yeah.
This is interesting what Alexandra's just posted in the chat. What about virtual advice through an ATM rather than in person in branch? You know, again, does that build the confidence and comfort with the technology? You know, when we're thinking about reimagining the branch experience. I just wanted to turn quickly to an issue that's really important, I think, when it comes to financial services, and that's trust. And obviously, as you said, those positive interactions can help build trust. Alexandra, how do you do that when you don't have the opportunity to meet customers face to face and you're a fully digital provider?
Yeah. I also just wanted to check. I think we've got Michael Hind from Nationwide, and I know that Nationwide are kind of always market leading in terms of trust. But the work that they do with their kind of their retail branches, so that would be great to hear from him as well at some point if we can. But yeah, I actually think Monzo do very well on this level in terms of trust measurement of CSAT, NPS, and obviously rankings in kind of CMA tables. Because we're very transparent, very clear about providing the service that we offer and the way we offer it to our colleagues through community interactions, and obviously through delivery of the values that the bank has, which is being a bank for everyone, and being transparent and translating jargon into actual content that someone can understand. So accessibility to information through great content is driving trust. Speed to response, so 24/7 servicing is driving trust, because whenever there is an issue that a customer may have, they are able to access a person at the end of a routed chat to help them with their problem. So these are things that drive trust. Saying, you know, delivering on what you're saying that you're going to do at the point of time that the customer has a crisis issue. That could be, I've lost, you know, I've run out of money, I've lost my card, I can't access anything, or I'm struggling and I think there's a fraud or an account takeover. So actually being quick to respond is the thing also that's helping us drive trust, versus, you know, SLAs that are not being delivered on that can take days because you're having to route through multiple platforms or to multiple people. And one of the USPs for Monzo is having a cohort of staff, whether you want to call them agents or frontline staff or advisors. They're actually called customer operatives, and they are able to answer pretty much anything that a customer wants them to answer. So the training and the knowledge, the access to the knowledge that they have is kind of quite strong. And it does come back to that content of knowledge, the way that we source the information for the customer operative to use, the way that the processes support the questions that the customer might have, and the speed at which we're responding to them is driving that trust. What we do see, though, is that where those things don't work well, we do start to get a higher volume of complaints. A good example would be through COVID, where I think most banks were struggling with volumes for financial difficulties, vulnerability, just information, you know, what's going to happen to my holiday, what's happening to my travel, just that big volume. We started to see a degradation of service, so not quick to respond, not speed to drive that trust. We started to see complaints rise, you know, kind of 2- and 3-fold. So you can see the really clear correlation to how we've been able to drive trust through the way that we're answering and servicing. But then when it goes wrong, then the metrics start to reflect that as well. So that's probably one thing to bear in mind, that this is not like a panacea for everything being brilliant. You've got to be able to course correct too. And now I can't meet those service requirements. My customers are starting to feel that, and they're starting to worry, and they're starting to not trust. So how do we then add in to the service? We're still dealing with it, we're updating you. And I think that's something that certainly Monzo and a lot of other banks maybe haven't done quite so well through COVID, which is keeping the customer up to date on those issues.
Yeah, I think that's a great overview. And I like that positioning of trust based on being there for your customer in a timely fashion, particularly when in moments of stress. And I would imagine for both Nick and Celine, that really resonates with what they were hearing from customers and the kind of services they provide to support those outcomes through whether it's agents or customer service representatives or staff in general. Nick, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think these are really they're really interesting insights for a couple of reasons, and one of which is we think about customer centricity. I think there's not a silver bullet. It's very much about the demographic that we're talking to, and one of the data sets that I found really hard to research actually was the aging demographic of the branch. So what is the category of age groups that regularly attend the branch? Because I do feel like in an aging society that we have, there's very much a dependency from the higher age groups that regularly go to the branch. And so is there going to continue to be this natural erosion that takes place? I think that's something that's probably quite difficult to establish at the moment with so much change that's taking place. But one of the things that we do, and there's a big focus for us, is that we align the employee experience to the customer experience. So a lot of the AI enablement of the knowledge sets that our technology provides is from an in-branch experience. Actually, you can use the AI search function as a support tool to be able to support the employee when servicing the person in branch. And using machine learning, what we can determine is, what are the knowledge sets that are being used? What are the use cases from the employee experience when trying to service or when servicing the customer, and then linking, an employee measurement or an employee score to like a net promoter score or a CES, because actually from an organizational perspective, the customer is the employee, and we're really seeing an acceleration of that lens. Happy employees delivering a happy customer experience is utopia, but we also know that there are a lot of pressures for employees as well. So we really see there being a lot more measurements, like even a self-service score for employees that are in branch that are using our technology that really reflects and represents what are the trends that are happening, and can be identified as directional for customers and consumers. And so that AI component and that machine learning component in real time, surfacing the right content and knowledge, but also insights of the employee behavior, is a really, really good way of getting the measure of the employee satisfaction. And for us, that's something that we're seeing more and more of now.
Thanks for that, Nick. Celine, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on Michael's comment, and I think it's right.
I was hoping you would.
Oh, can you hear me well? Yeah, so I think it's a lot about the handover process. I guess there's still an appetite for some customers to have that personal touch that they get in the branch, because it's an in-person interaction. But I think it's about allowing customers to choose when and how to complete any financial process and make that journey as seamless and consistent as possible. If they choose to start a transaction using digital channels and then pick up their request face-to-face in the branch, that experience should be easy and engaging across every channels. And that's where, as Nick mentioned very well, AI-powered technology can help support that entire journey. So I guess there'll always be a balance between the human interaction and the digital interaction, but it just needs to be done in a way that responds to how customers wants to, again, interact with the bank in the branch or as a digital service.
Thanks, Celine. And I think that, points back to what Alexandra said and Nick built on, that trust is built through that positive experience across all of those channels. I wonder if we could just switch for a second, though, and address one of the questions in the chat. And maybe, Des, you can kick us off on this. Are we creating a category of have versus have-nots by moving away from branches, given that not everyone has the same access to technology, and that may very much may be linked to, you know, people at the lower end of the income scale, for example? How does that kind of access fit in with digital roadmaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so certainly. Sorry, I just apologise. I've got a small dog and he keeps scratching my door. Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, the branch, in my opinion, and what I've said, I think the branch has got some time to go, and we mustn't get rid of it for that very reason. We have the people who aren't banked. Even if you look at that situation, how do you give them access if they certainly haven't got an online experience they can use, or a mobile phone? I think if we look at what Alex was saying, and the Monzo experience, it's, you know, it's really slick, really innovative, fantastic in terms of onboarding without ever having to go anywhere near a branch. But there's still a number of things you need to go to a branch for, and dependent on your circumstances. And you need to break down the use cases of, I think Nick said, of what are those events that people go to a branch for, and see where the AI automation tools can help customers, and then how you can transition those customers over to them. So just to give an example, during COVID, we saw a lot of an increase in death notifications. So in normal circumstances, people would go into the branch, they'd bring whatever certificates they needed, and they pop along there and find they hadn't brought the right one, they have to go back and bring something else. So transferring that to an online experience during COVID, you know, that really accelerated the time to process it, because you could put in place dynamic forms that prompted people to supply the right information, and so you sort of negated the need to go to a branch. And then if you start to eat away at each of those use cases and identify it, it's all about test and learn. So the in-branch experience, training the agents up with the best information, finding the customers that have those unique queries that couldn't be dealt with outside of the branch, and making that the slickest possible experience when you visit. When you visit. I think that's answered the question, is it, Lisa? Or
no, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I wonder if anyone else has anything to add about that. Are we at risk, you know, given branch closure, sorry, of deepening that digital divide, and how do you overcome that danger that the person who asked the question pointed out? One other question for the panel, and I think, you know, we can keep that in the back of our mind, is, you know, first to you, Nick, and then perhaps to you, Des. You know, obviously a lot of people switched to digital during the current health crisis because they had to, either for reasons they couldn't make it to the branch, or they were in a sheltered category, or for whatever reason. And that includes some of that aging demographic that Nick pointed to, who suddenly adopted digital. Do we think that post-crisis, people's behavior will revert, and we'll see more people going back to the branch? And Nick, maybe we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, you know, I'm a little bit conflicted by this question, actually, because I think, quite honestly, we don't know. It's a bit of a guessing game, isn't it, at the moment? And there's a couple of reasons why I've been thinking about this a lot. There's a couple of reasons why I think it's a little bit unpredictable. Is that we're seeing such a surge as we've referenced, many times, in terms of digital adoption. And I think, we're in a service-based economy, and if you're getting those rich services through your mobile and there's no need for you to go to a branch, then typically, the younger generation, that is going to be just first nature. However, I thought it was quite interesting this week that the post office have just announced that they're doing collections from the door. And I also referenced Metro Bank opening the first retail bank, what was it, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer now. So I do think that there are pockets of disruption and opportunity. I think that there is you know, with the erosion of the high street and retail in general, I do wonder whether there's enough richness of a sort of an in-branch experience that can really address the need. But I do think that there's going to be a natural evolution of a transformation, a change of opportunity that, you know, I have great faith in. We live in quite a competitive society, right? So I think there's going to be two things that'll happen. One is that we're not going to get away from that person-to-person experience. There's going to continue to be the need, and I think that theirs has hit the nail on the head and probably the best example that we can think of. So I think you were spot on, really, Des. I mean, you know, to have the empathy and the compassion to be able to deal with somebody that's had a death in their family, to verify a death certificate. I mean, you can't imagine something that is probably quite so impersonal to death digitally, although we're all on a video conference now, and you know, there's some empathy that's being created. So, but I think that you probably can't replace that as an in-branch experience. But I do also think that with the, you know, the evolution of certainly video commerce and you know, new platform applications, which does actually bring more of a community feel and can actually connect people, I think in a certainly a more meaningful way. I do feel that there's opportunity within the branch to be able to utilize technology to give a richer experience. I think a lot of that is probably about providing a higher level of advice or more personalized experience in branch. It does still feel like it's a little bit fragmented, but I do think that yeah, there is an opportunity that's probably taking place at the moment and going to take place over the next couple of years, where there will probably be a little bit of a continuation of erosion. But I do feel like, you know, having the ability to sit down with either one advisor or two advisors to be able to deal with a lot of different complexities in terms of your own needs at once, I think there's a place for that, yeah.
Would you add to that, Des? Because I can see you're nodding your head. Do you see people reverting back to the branch after the pandemic?
Yeah, when is after the pandemic? I think in the next, at the end of the year and beyond, I think there's going to be more of a need to go to the branch, and for that, those empathetic reasons, etc. But on the flip side of that, because of the capabilities that companies are building out, off the back of learning what customers are really wanting to do online, then there's less necessity in reality. It's because of the fact you're going to have more capabilities to update your details, change your address, switch funds, or whatever you might want to do, or apply for your banking. So that all of those things will be made available online as sort of investment budgets in 2021 start to evolve. So I think the challenge now for businesses is how you sort of get that communication and that message out there, so it's inherent within all of your staff. So it's the staff in the branches, it's the staff on the phone lines, and that's talking to people and saying, look, do you know you can do this online? You can point you to this video where you can see how you can make that application, how you can switch your funds. And it's really, it's not just the technology, and it's not just the branch network. I think the branch network has got a place over the next few years, definitely. It's just how businesses react with the branch network, the technology, and the communication. The communication is the very key, important element in getting the message out there.
Thanks for that, Celine. I see you nodding. Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree with Des and Nick. I think that there will be a place for the branch to, you know, for people to go to the branch, and there'll be a use case for that. But as again, the way digital is accelerating, and the way again people want to interact with their providers, with their companies, it will be less so of what we see at the moment. I think the usage of the branch will need to be rethink and adapt to how customers want to evolve and embrace digital.
Thanks, Celine. And just pointing to something that Michael said, and Michael, I feel like you should be on stage with us. He wonders if there'll be more face-to-face online interactions soon that can start to replace those more complex service and sales branch visits. Maybe Alex, we'll start with you on that one, because obviously you come from both, you have the experience of both a purely digital provider and a more traditional high street.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there is still a space for discussion with someone who has more knowledge than you do in relation to the product that you're buying. Largely, I think that will be in terms of complex investment cases. I think having access to virtual advice is going to be the bridge that we've been talking about today. I was reflecting a bit on the last time a few years ago I was forced into a branch to complete a mortgage application, which was obviously, I didn't want to go to the branch and it took a long time to get there and so on and so forth. But the key thing that I took away from that appointment was that the person that I was going to speak to actually just used videos and made me watch the videos to understand a lot of the content that they were talking about. So in some respects, I think providers are trying to do that, but they've got to make that bridge in terms of tech support and capability so that you can just log on to financial advice video chat. Because I still think that we're going to need some support for some of the products and services that are on offer. But for most of them, I actually think if the content's good and your capability is good in terms of how you provide that service, we can link self-serve to a bit of financial advice and complete the whole thing without having to go to a branch.
Des, I can see you nodding away there. Presumably you agree with what Alexandra's just said.
Absolutely, and I wanted to pick up on something that Alexandra said earlier about implementing humanoid bots or using an ATM to sort of give advice and everything else. I just, I always remember when we came back from holiday in Terminal 5, the transit area, they had this humanoid woman, and children used to go up and push the button, and this woman would start speaking, and they'd run away terrified. It was a very weird experience. It wasn't quite there yet. It had, the voice wasn't right, and you could ask her questions and she'd respond. But I think that technology will come, and I think Nick's just posted, about getting financial advice over video chat. It just needs to mature a little bit in terms of its reliability, its ability to understand the question that's being asked, and how you can get a response to it. Sorry, Alex, I'll probably divert. It's gone off on a totally different tangent, but that was what sparked in my mind as well.
For that example nowadays, I've got to admit, robot in the terminal. But yeah, I think I just think there are. That I do definitely agree. If we start with the processes that the provider has and work from there, figuring out which ones you can automate and which ones you can't, over a period of time we'll get there. And that, I think that was to my earlier comments around, that generation gap. We'll start to see that natural erosion of branch use, and branches may become something different, like face space where there is a row of booths where you can access virtual advice if you're in town, etc., rather than the physical person that welcomes you in that you sit with in a desk environment today.
Michael makes another great point, and I agree with Nick. Next time we're going to bring you onto the panel as well, is that it's the infrastructure piece, right? That broadband coverage is crucial to everything that digital providers or even a lot of the technology you're using in branches is crucial. Michael, you're free to join us on stage at any point. We've only got a few minutes left, but we'd love to hear you. So if you want to click your share audio video button, you're more than welcome to join us on stage, because we're just about to move to our kind of final thoughts from each of our panelists, and we'd love to hear from you too, Michael. What are some of the biggest challenges to improving the in-branch experience? Obviously, we just mentioned infrastructure, and what do we see as the future of the branch? And I know that's a big question, but we're going to start with you, Des. You're on mute, I think. Yes, you are.
the future of the branch, putting aside the near-term challenges, I think a fully automated area, as Alex describes. If you compare it to your shopping experience years ago, self-service terminals were beyond what people could think about. But actually having those in the branch with something that can give advice, can give accurate information, can share with you the processes that you need to follow if you visited a branch, and the video content that guides you through any questions you may have. I think it is how branches are going to be in about 10 years' time. There'll be less of them, they'll be smaller, and there will be humans on hand to sort of deal with those tricky questions that people are still going to have in 10 years' time.
Thanks, Des. And over to you, Celine.
Yeah, no, I would probably just add that the future of the bank will be around that seamless interaction from digital to the in-person experience. So making sure the processes are simplified and that the use cases in the branch are personalized, and then there's consistent sort of a message and interaction between a customer starting the process online and then having to continue that journey in the branch.
Thanks. And over to you, Alexandra. Final thoughts?
Is so intrinsically linked to
Oh, we're having a little trouble with your sound. Maybe just lean into your microphone a little bit. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on this idea and concept of a cashless society. We can only make the branches automated, slicker, reliant on self-serve and adoption of technology if we are not relying on cash. And those are the things that need to kind of move in parallel. So whilst we still have a cash-based society, we are still going to need somewhere to deposit these funds in some way, shape or form. In terms of advice and guidance, I do believe that we can go quicker and harder on automation of these processes if we have investment to do so. But yeah, I love the idea of a branch that's filled with automated advisors in some way, shape or form.
Thanks for that future vision, Alexandra. And Nick, the final word is with you, but I will also remind you that you still haven't given us the correct answer to the poll question.
What is the correct answer, Lisa? Yeah, so there's three things in wrapping up for me. One is that, and maybe this is a subject that will never sort of get concluded, but I really struggle with, the lifetime customer value. So how do you determine the lifetime customer value and attribute the retail branch experience with that? And I think that that's something that it's just quite hard to do. For me, I think that also links to the second thing, which is really the employee experience, because I think that heightened employee experience in branch is something that is really, really important, because I do feel that there's an extra level of service and focus that the employees give in branch. So the higher the experience of the employees, I think that can then link to the customer. And then there's obviously, the technology piece. And I think that Alexandra's probably, nailed it in saying that, wouldn't it be wonderful to walk into a branch and have a completely personalized experience with everything being automated? It feels like there's a long way to go. And I think that there's, the biggest challenge is probably the legacy and the current environment where there's just so much demand actually on employees. But I do think that there are iterations which are already demonstrating improvements. And so for me, I do think that automation piece is reaching a level of maturity now where actually there's more proven use cases. I think that those proven use cases are starting to really sort of help transform and guide the strategy of the digital experience in branch. And so I do think that there'll be a little bit of a hockey stick. I think things are going to improve probably quite rapidly. But in this period, it feels like there's almost like a holding pattern at the moment where, we are very much in the circumstances that we are because of COVID. But it does feel like there's going to be some rapid progression. So for me, it feels really exciting. I have to say that I'm not really a branch user. And so sounds a little bit conflicting, but I think that if that experience can be enhanced, and I think that actually video technology is one of those areas where I think there can be some massive gains. I think that adoption is starting to take place. Then I think there's a place for the branch, yeah. But I think there's probably going to be more of a personalized, highly specialized experience. Probably less of them, but they're definitely not going away.
Thanks for that, Nick. And you're going to give us the answer to the poll question?
Yeah, so it's number 2 between 1655 and 1655. And for anybody that's going to call me out on it, I have got a reference point here as well. I think that depending on where you reference, I know there's going to be a ton of people that were using Google for this. But actually, the correct response is around 1650, a cloth merchant, Thomas Smith, opened the first provincial bank in Nottingham, and it was actually the same century that the Bank of England was founded as well. So yeah, Thomas Smith, and it was the start of the Smith banking services, which were rolled out of the UK. And actually, there's an evolution to one of the first banks, which was NatWest Bank as well. So it's quite an interesting journey.
Thanks for that, Nick. And to all of you who voted Ipswich, including Victor Cruz, I'm very sorry. That is the wrong answer. With that, I just wanted to thank all of my panelists. It's really been a great discussion, and I think one that we could carry on for hours having. Thank you for all the questions and comments. Special shout out to Michael, who will definitely be invited to our next session. For those of you who have a little bit of time, I highly recommend jumping into a quick taste of the speed networking session. Each one lasts a few minutes, and it's lots of fun. And obviously also visit Bold 360 by LogMeIn at their booth. They've got a great report you can download, and you can chat with them directly at the booth. So thanks again, everyone. And it's been a fantastic discussion. And thanks to the panel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.